Think back, if you can, to how you first learned to read.
Oh, wow.
Right. Try to picture the actual environment for a second. Was it just a blur of endless flashcards?
Probably.
Yeah. Or maybe sitting cross-legged on one of those colorful classroom rugs, just repeating A is for apple, B is for boy over and over again.
Until the sounds just kind of magically stuck in your brain.
Exactly. For a lot of us, early education was largely about that rote repetition. You memorized the rules simply because the teacher told you the rules.
End of story.
End of story, yeah. But today, we are going on a deep dive that, honestly, it completely shatters that old school memory. We have this stack of 4 educational documents used in early childhood English language arts.
ELA, yeah.
And at first glance, you, the listener, you might assume these are just, standard reading worksheets to keep kids busy.
They look like it.
They really do. But they are actually blueprints. They are blueprints for teaching tiny human beings how to think critically, how to argue logically, and this is the crazy part, how to back up their claims with hard evidence.
Yeah, the journey we are going to take with these sources today is a chronological progression. We are starting with transitional kindergarten.
So we're talking about 4-year-olds here.
Exactly, 4-year-olds. And then we're moving up through kindergarten, 1st grade, and finally 2nd grade. And what we are tracking in this deep dive is how one specific critical thinking framework is introduced at the very beginning of a child's educational life.
Right.
And then how it scales. It scales in complexity as their developing brain becomes capable of handling more abstract concepts. It really is a masterclass in cognitive scaffolding.
Let's set the stage by looking at the visual consistency across all 4 of these documents, because the physical layout is, well, it's identical regardless of the grade level.
Right, from TK all the way to 2nd grade.
Every single lesson is broken down into 4 distinct, heavily color-coded quadrants, plus a synthesis section on the side.
It's very structured.
Highly structured. So in the top left, there is always a blue quadrant with a big question mark icon. This is where the core problem is presented to the kid. Right next to it, in the top right, is the red quadrant. This one has a little graphic of a brain, and it prompts the student to tell. The bold word there is claim, and it explicitly directs the student to tell what you think.
Right, which is huge.
It forces the child to start their sentence with, I think the answer is blank.
So they're essentially forcing the student to state a clear hypothesis before they do anything else.
Yes.
Once they've planted that flag, they have to figure out how to defend it.
Which brings us down to the bottom left, the green quadrant. This features a magnifying glass icon.
The investigation part.
Exactly. The prompt is find, and the bold word is evidence, with the subtitle find the proof. And the sentence starter for the kid is either I see blank or I hear blank.
They have to rely on their senses.
Right. Finally, in the bottom right is the yellow quadrant. It has a little pencil icon, and the prompt is show. The bold concept is reasoning, with the instruction, show how you know.
And the prompt there.
The sentence starter is, I know this because blank. And then on the far right side of every single document, there is a gray box containing a word bank of vocabulary and a put it all together section.
Where they synthesize it.
Exactly. They combine their claim, evidence, and reasoning into a cohesive paragraph.
What's fascinating here is if we step back and look at the architecture of this exercise, this is the scientific method.
It really is.
Or you could argue it's the exact structure of a lawyer's legal brief.
A 4-year-old lawyer.
Basically, you make a claim, you provide observable evidence, and you explain your reasoning to connect the two. But it is entirely disguised as early childhood phonics.
That's the brilliant part.
It trains the brain at its absolute most plastic and foundational stage to avoid blindly guessing an answer. It demands proof. It forces the child to articulate the underlying rule that led them to their conclusion.
Okay, let's see how this actually plays out in practice with our first source, the Transitional Kindergarten, or TK, document. So picture this. You are 4 years old.
Okay, I'm 4.
The blue question quadrant asks, what is the onset in this picture? And there is a cartoon graphic of a kitten, a cat.
Just a simple cat.
Right. But before we even get to the answer, let's look at the word bank provided in that gray box. The words are onset, rhyme, phoneme, and blend.
Wow.
I know. Most adults probably couldn't give you the dictionary definition of a phone.
We should probably clarify those terms for anyone listening right now.
We do.
So a phone is simply the smallest unit of sound in speech. So the C sound in cat is a phoneme.
Okay.
An onset is the initial consonant sound of a syllable before you hit the vowel. The rhyme is the string of letters that follows, usually a vowel and final consonants.
Like the at and cat.
Exactly. And a blend is when two consonants are put together, but you can still hear both sounds, like the S in stop.
Right.
Introducing this level of vocabulary to children who are barely out of toddlerhood, it speaks to a deep respect for their intellect.
It really does.
We so often water down language for young children, but this curriculum assumes they can handle the proper terminology if it is presented in the correct context.
So following the logic flow for this TK document, the student goes to the red claim box and writes the onset, and they put beginning sound in parentheses is C.
Okay, they've made their claim.
Then, in the green evidence box, they prove it by writing. I know the beginning sound in cat says C, at.
They're finding the proof.
And finally, the yellow reasoning box puts it all together. They write, this is a picture of a cat. C-A-T, I can spell C plus at equals C-A-T, cat.
We have to really consider the cognitive leap a 4-year-old is making here.
It's massive.
Separating the concept of a cat, the furry animal they pet at home, from the abstract auditory sound C, is remarkably difficult.
Because they're not looking at letters yet, they're looking at a picture of an animal.
Exactly. It requires them to momentarily ignore the physical object and focus purely on phonetics. They are isolating a variable.
Taking a whole concept and extracting just the initial auditory unit.
Yes. They are providing auditory evidence for their claim. And their reasoning is basically a mathematical equation of language. This sound plus this sound equals this word.
Okay, so let's move down the stack to the kindergarten source and see how the framework evolves as they get a little older. We have the exact same picture of the orange cat.
Still the cat.
Still the cat. But the blue question has changed to, how do you spell this word? And the word bank also shifts. We move away from isolating the onset, and the vocabulary words are now sound, name, letters, and here.
This signals a vital developmental shift.
How so?
Well, in TK, the goal was merely isolation, just grabbing that very first sound. But in kindergarten, the framework scales up. The evidence requires them to deconstruct the entire phonetic structure of the word.
Right, because for their claim, they state the spelling, C-A-T. And for their evidence, they can't just point to the picture anymore.
No, that won't cut it.
They write, I hear a K, which is AC, an A, which is an A, and a T, which is a T. They are breaking down every single phonetic building block and mapping those distinct sounds to specific visual symbols.
It's mapping sound to text.
And then their reasoning is simply, I listened to the sounds and figured out the letters.
Now, that reasoning might seem overly simple to us. I listened and figured it out.
Yeah, it sounds a bit obvious.
But metacognitively, it is a massive step for a 5-year-old. They are explaining their own internal process.
Oh, I see.
They are acknowledging that their methodology, which is listening carefully, holding those 3 distinct sounds in their working memory and translating them into symbols, is the valid reasoning behind their spelling.
They are proving their work by explaining how their own brain just functioned.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this and see how it scales when we jump to the first grade document, because the complexity increases significantly right here.
We're stepping away from sounding out simple animal words.
Way away. The question asks, how many syllables does the word window have? The word window is written out, highlighted in purple text, and the word bank gives them entirely new tools: syllable, vowel, and consonant.
Notice how the demand for evidence changes when we move from kindergarten to first grade.
Well, the claim is just the number 2. But the evidence they use to prove there are 2 syllables in the word window is simply the vowels I and O.
It's so elegant.
In the document, the student actually physically colors the I blue and the O green, proving they actively searched the word and identified the specific letters.
This is a crucial pivot in how a child learns to process information. They are moving from subjective observation to the application of universal linguistic rules.
What do you mean by subjective?
Think about how we usually teach kids to count syllables. We tell them to clap their hands to the beats of the word. Window, 2 claps.
Right, I remember doing that.
But clapping is subjective evidence. What if they clap 3 times by mistake?
Or they just clap to a rhythm they like.
Exactly. Instead, this framework requires objective structural evidence. Look at the reasoning they provide. Why does finding an I and an O prove there are 2 syllables? The reasoning states, every syllable needs one vowel.
Ah, so they are essentially applying deductive reasoning.
Yes.
Premise 1,
Huh.
every syllable needs a vowel. Premise 2, I see 2 vowels. Conclusion, there are 2 syllables.
It's like Aristotelian logic for 6-year-olds.
It really is. They found the vowels, they applied the rule, they proved the syllable count. It is an airtight structural defense of their claim.
They are learning that feelings or guesses aren't enough. You can't just feel out the syllables. You have to find the underlying rule and apply it to the physical evidence right there in front of you.
Which brings us to our final source, the second grade document. Here, the training wheels really come off.
We are way past spelling now.
It is no longer about spelling or counting syllables at all. We are moving into high-level reading comprehension. The question asks, which text feature helps you understand the meaning of a new word?
And the word bank elevates too.
Significantly. It includes captions, glossary, definitions, and vocabulary.
The shift here is profound. It's from learning to read to reading to learn. It is about navigating information you don't already possess.
The claim they make is the glossary. For their evidence, they identify the core problem. I see that we need to understand a word.
Right.
And for the reasoning, they write, the glossary tells the meanings of words. And then they weave it all into their synthesis paragraph at the end. I think the answer is glossary. I see that we need to understand a word. I know this because the glossary is where you can find definitions.
Consider what a second grader is actually articulating here. They are learning how to use tools to overcome their own knowledge gaps.
Because they can't know every word.
Right. They aren't expected to memorize the dictionary. They are expected to know how to find out what a word means. The claim is the tool. The evidence is the need. And the reasoning is the function of the tool. They are explaining the utility of a textbook's architecture.
So we've tracked this framework from 4-year-olds isolating a consonant to 7-year-olds explaining the utility of a glossary.
Quite a journey.
But let's connect this back to you, the listener.
Yeah, why does this matter to us?
Exactly. You might be commuting right now, or folding laundry, or maybe prepping for a corporate meeting where you have to analyze a mountain of data. Why should you care about how a first grader proves the word window has 2 syllables?
Because it forces us to examine the foundational mental software we all use, and frankly, how that software tends to become corrupted as we age.
Corrupted how?
We live in an era of unprecedented information overload. Misinformation is rampant everywhere. We are bombarded daily with claims on social media, in the news, in boardrooms.
So true.
People throw out assertions constantly, often with absolutely nothing to back them up. What we are looking at in these early ELA documents is the exact framework adults desperately need to filter out the noise, but we frequently abandon it.
It's the Claim Evidence Reasoning Framework, CER. And you are right. Adults abandon it all the time.
All the time.
Think about a standard corporate meeting. If I ask a colleague for the reasoning behind a Q3 sales projection, and their evidence was as rigorous as that first grader finding the vowels in the word window,
Your life would be a lot easier.
it would be so much easier. But usually adult reasoning is just, trust me, I've been doing this a long time, or the market just feels like it's trending this way.
And that is a perfect example of what psychologists call authority bias, or the effect heuristic.
Okay, break that down.
As adults, we process so much information every day that our brains develop shortcuts. We substitute the hard question, which is, what is the structural objective evidence for this claim?
Right.
We substitute that with an easier question, like, do I trust the person saying this? Or does this claim align with what I already believe?
It's lazy thinking.
It is. If we are requiring a kindergarten student to point to a specific vowel to mathematically prove that a syllable exists before we accept their answer, we should be holding ourselves to that exact same standard.
So when someone makes a claim in a meeting, or we read a headline online, our default internal response should be that green magnifying glass. Find the proof.
Exactly.
What is the objective evidence? And then the yellow pencil. Show how you know. What is the logical rule that connects your evidence to your claim?
It's about maintaining a habit of mind. These documents illustrate that critical thinking isn't just a genetic trait you are either born with or not.
It's a skill.
It is a highly structured, step-by-step process. You make a claim, you observe the evidence, you state the rule that links them together, By breaking it down into these color-coded quadrants, the curriculum demystifies the act of thinking itself.
And as adults, we implicitly know how to spell cat and count syllables, so we look at these and think we've mastered these worksheets.
We think we're past it.
But when the topics become abstract, like politics, data analysis, or social media rumors, we forget to ask for the I and the O.
We do. We just accept the claim.
We really do forget to ask for the I and the O. It's the ultimate antidote to because I said so thinking. Looking at the journey across these four sources today, it's incredibly satisfying to see complex cognitive skills broken down so methodically.
It's a beautiful progression.
We started with a 4-year-old isolating a single sound using terms like foam and onset. Then we watched them move to kindergarten, breaking down an entire phonetic structure and explaining their own listening process.
Their own metacognition.
Right. Then we saw a first grader apply rigid structural rules to prove the anatomy of a word. And finally, a second grader mastering the metacognitive skill of identifying which textbook feature solves their problem.
The broader societal implication here is quite profound.
How so?
We have just examined how a generation of students is being taught to process reality. From the age of 4, they are being rigorously trained to instinctively demand empirical evidence.
Wow.
They are graded on their ability to articulate logical reasoning before they accept an answer. The provocative question this leaves us with is, what is the world going to look like in 20 years?
That's a fascinating thought.
Right. What happens when an entire generation, a generation actively trained to be immune to baseless claims and conditioned to filter out "because I said so" rhetoric finally takes over the workforce and the voting booths?
A whole generation holding up that green magnifying glass and asking the world for the proof.
Yeah.
That is a truly amazing thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you a fresh perspective on how you learn, how you think, and how you argue. Until next time, whatever claims you encounter out there, keep asking, how do you know? And make sure you check the evidence. Catch you on the next one.